And welcome to the Mon Sportscast podcast. We got Boomer with us this morning. Boomer, wrestling all Friday and Saturday and trying to squeeze some basketball in beside.
Yeah, I was in Billings all weekend for the state wrestling tournament, as were thousands of other people concentrating on wrestling. So basketball kind of took the back seat over the weekend, and you get back on a Monday, or you get back to work on Monday rather, and all of a sudden tournaments are starting in just a couple of days, and in some cases starting today actually. So it's that time of year, right? Wrestling's done, and now we
Yep.
move on, and it'll be about a month solid of just straight basketball. So,
Yeah, it's like you said, it's that time of the year.
but I just want to mention about state wrestling. Um, I've been doing that for a long time now, covering for the radio station and following the Glasgow Scotties, and it's incredible to me the amount of how the girls wrestling has just grown. They're going to have to make a decision at some point what they're going to do with the girls tournament because I just see girls wrestling continue to grow and explode, and they're not going to be able to run both the boys and girls at the same time, same location in the future. It's if they continue to get that kind of participation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't know how many female athletes, girl athletes there were this year. I know there was like 833 total athletes, but I don't know what the number was on the girls. Do you?
No, I actually don't, but they were running a lot of mats there with the girls, and I think that's great, and it is exciting to watch girls wrestling. Um, but it's just they're just going to go later and later as they try to fit all of that in, right? I mean, Friday night got
Yeah.
kind of long, and because so many participants, so it'll be interesting to see what the MHSA decides to do with girls wrestling because whether they split that up or not. Because you'd hate to see that because you want the girls to have that same to wrestle in front of those big crowds like that, like they get at state wrestling, because that's an electric atmosphere as you get into Saturday night or even on Saturday morning during the semifinals. It's a fantastic atmosphere.
Yeah, I like my favorite part, of course, is the parade of athletes. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. All the athletes coming out, and then Saturday, like you say, the semifinals. I think that's the big one there. To be honest with you.
Isn't it with this is my take on wrestling fans is they're so knowledgeable and they know so much. If you and Glasgow fans obviously really know what's going on. They're pretty
Right.
passionate about
Yeah.
wrestling, but you talk to those folks, they're aware of what's going on. You got 12 mats going on. They know what's going on, and especially come semifinals, with the entire crowd is just fixated on not just their team or their classification. The BC people are watching the double A's are watching BCs, and someone picks up an upset win on mat 8, for example, and the place just goes crazy because they know. To
Yeah.
me, for someone who didn't grow up in wrestling and only know what I've learned here, being from Glasgow, um, it's so overwhelming to me. I get overloaded a little bit, but those true wrestling fans, they know exactly what's going on each mat.
Yeah. It's definitely. I think it's a high school sporting event in the state. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that kind of crowd getting into it, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So it's always a big event for those true wrestling fans. It is like the weekend for them to have everyone together, all classifications, the best wrestlers in the state of Montana, all in one location. It's a pretty cool thing, and I always tell people if you've never been, I think a great time to go if you just want to catch a bit, like you said, Saturday morning for the semifinals. That is, and you've been down there too when you're down on the floor, uh, and you see the emotions that are generated by those wrestlers, win or lose, especially on semifinals. It is. It is, it's tough to see in some instances, some kids get beat who weren't supposed to get beat, or, it's pretty gosh darn emotional. So, um, great event though. Great event.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yep. Well, basketball going to start, they say.
They say, right? Hey, so,
Yeah.
we don't, here in Glasgow, we don't cover the District 2C basketball tournament, but that's actually getting underway tonight, believe it or not. The 2C has, well, they run their boys and girls together at Sydney High School, and they have 10 teams for both boys and girls. And so they have to start that tournament tonight. They'll start boys and girls, and I think they start at 3 o'clock today, and then on Monday and continue through tonight. And that tournament goes all the way through next Monday. So 1 week from today, then they'll play in Culbertson, and they'll actually have their boys and girls fifth and sixth grade, not grade, fifth and sixth place games, and the winner of those games advances on to divisional. So you talk about a lot of basketball in Sydney starting on Monday, going all the way through next Monday. 20 teams competing, and if you take a look at that bracket, it is, it'll make your eyes go cross just a little bit trying to keep up with that for sure. Now, interesting thing about the District 2C is that, as I mentioned, they have 10 teams in that. That actually is going to be reduced next year. Fairview is going to move to Class B. So Fairview will be in the District 2B, and Circle is moving to the District 3C. So that district tournament will be back. Their district will be back again to 8 teams for next year for basketball, and primarily for basketball when it comes to tournaments like that. Yeah, but Fairview will join the District 2B, and Circle will go into the 3C. And because the 3C only has 6 teams, so that'll give them 7 next year when Circle joins the District 3C. But yeah, so the
Good.
2C tournament, as I say that, it's interesting. You kind of have to know what's going on to follow along, right? When I'm saying, well, we got 2C, we got 3C, we got going into the 2B. If you don't know what's going on, you're probably thinking I'm speaking some kind of different foreign language. But those basketball fans know what I mean when I talk about that. So, also, the District 2B tournament. This will be in Malta, and there are only 5 teams in this district, in the District 2B, and 4 teams advance on the divisional. So basically, you're running this tournament to eliminate one. A few years ago, they actually had a play-in game where the 4 and 5 seeds from the regular season would play each other in a play-in game. The loser was done, and they got rid of that, I think, 2 years ago. So now the 4 and 5 teams, it's not really a play-in game. They'll play each other. The winner will go on to the semifinals, but the loser will gets to play another game and a chance to come back and finish in fourth place. But I'll go through that bracket. We'll start with the District 2B boys, where uh, Wolf Point is the number one seed out of the District 2B. They win the regular season title. Now, they lost a game, their second game of the year. They were beaten by Glendive, and I think they scored less than 40 points in that game. That was a game I was really interested in seeing because Glendive from the Eastern A, really big, tall team, and they held Wolf Point down there. So that was Wolf Point's second loss of the year. The Wolf Point boys have lost to Baker and Glendive, but they did go unbeaten in the District 2B. And I like to talk about signature wins for Wolf Point. Those 2 signature wins they had were over a very good Malta boys team. So Wolf Point certainly deserving of that number one seed. They won't play until Friday. Malta finished number 2. So the Mustangs will play Poplar Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. and the winner advances on to the championship game. The Mustangs picked up some nice wins over the last couple of weeks. A win over Rocky Boy a couple weeks ago, and they beat Shelby just this past weekend at
Yep.
home pretty handily. So the Malta boys playing well as you would expect they always do going into that district tournament. It could be a real dogfight in that district 2B tournament. Glasgow and Harlem will play the other game, and that's at Thursday at 3 o'clock. The Scotty boys beat Harlem pretty easily on Friday night, but the Scotty boys losing to Poplar on Saturday, they would have had a chance to actually move up to the number 3 spot if they had beaten Poplar, but they weren't able to get that done. So they finished number 4. meaning they'll play Harlem Thursday at 3, and then they win, they will get Wolf Point Friday at 3 p.m. in the boys semifinal. For the Scotty boys, I know Coach Paul Yoakum. He thinks the Scotties can match up against Wolf Point if they can beat Harlem. They've been beaten by Harlem once this year, but if the Scotty boys can win against Harlem, he likes their chances against Wolf Point and using their size advantage against the Wolves. So we'll see if that plays out. You never know come tournament time. I would venture to say though, odds makers would have Wolf Point and Malta playing in the championship game for the boys, and then probably the 3 and 4 teams would be Poplar and Glasgow, and those 4 teams would more than likely come out of the 2B onto the Northern B boys tournament coming up. As far as the girls bracket goes for the District 2B, Malta unbeaten, of course, in District 2B. The Mets have put together a great season, only 2 losses on the year. The Mets have the only 2 losses they've had have been to Class A Haver. Otherwise, they've pretty much dominated teams this year as they return a lot of salty players from last year's team. They're very deep, and this is a team I think that has its sights set on winning a state title, and they will be the favorites uh, in this tournament as well. So that tournament will start out Thursday at 4:30. Glasgow and Harlem will play each other. Glasgow, the 4 seed, Harlem, the 5 seed. Glasgow and Harlem the Scotty girls actually picked up a couple victories over the weekend. They beat Harlem and Poplar on Friday and Saturday. So those are 2 nice wins for the Scotty girls. They'll open up with Harlem. They beat Harlem on Friday night here in Glasgow, but they'll play Thursday at 4:30 in the opening round game for the girls tournament. Wolf Point ended up the number 2 seed, and then Poplar the number 3 seed. So Wolf Point and Poplar will play Thursday at 8. And again, if you were a betting man, you would probably venture to say Malta is going to be in that championship game, probably. Uh, it would be a huge upset if they weren't. But after that, I think it's wide open. Wolf Point, Poplar. I think Glasgow might, if they play well, you never know. So, but Wolf Point and Poplar, I guess, will play in the semifinals. So the winner of that game will advance to the championship. As far as the 4 teams that would advance out of there, I would venture to say Malta, Wolf Point, Poplar, and Glasgow probably advance onto the Northern B Divisional Girls Tournament, which will be here in Glasgow next week. So that's the District 2B. And that tournament gets started again on Thursday in Malta. Now, the District 3C tournament features the number 1 team in Class C boys basketball, the boys, and the number 1 team in Class C girls basketball. That's pretty impressive when you talk about the 3C, which just has the 6 teams in it. So let's take a look at the bracket for the District 3C boys. Luster ended up going 18-0 on the season. Never really challenged too much. They did their big signature win was over Fairview, uh, and that was early in the year. And I think they beat them by 1 or 2. So, but Luster has beaten all challengers, especially in the District 3C. They will be the favorites if they. I mean, this is. I'm sure Coach Randy Reddick doesn't like people talking like that, but this is what media does. If anyone gets within 15 points, 20 points of Luster in this tournament, it'd be a surprise to many people. That's how strong they are and favored in this tournament. So Luster gets a first round bye. Scobie picked up a win over Nashua on Friday, which allowed the Spartans to move up to the number 2 spot. So they get a first round bye, and that dropped Nashua down into the number 3 position. So Scobie gets a first round bye. The Spartans been a little uneven this year at times, but they played Wolf Point pretty tough on Saturday. They beat a decent or good Nashua team on Friday night. So watch for this Scobie team. Jason Wolf has had a lot of success with the Spartans, obviously, and one hallmark of all Scobie teams, whether it's boys or girls, and you know this, Bob, good defense, right? I mean, that's what they preach up
Yep.
in Scobie,
Yep.
and you can expect that. They really did a good job of shutting down Nashua's Grady Nielsen, a player I talked about earlier on one of our podcasts, the freshman who has had such a fantastic season for a freshman, and they did an effective job. I was talking to some coaches. in just not letting Nashua get entry passes into him and forcing Nashua to shoot from the outside. And Scobie picked up the win over Nashua. So they're the number 2 seed. And then so the first round games for the District 3C boys Wednesday at 4:30. Dodson will play North Country. That's the 4-5 game. Dodson, the number 4 seed, North Country, the 5. And then Nashua will play Fraser at 7:30. Nashua's the 2 seed or 3 seed, and Fraser the 6 seed. And Nashua's beaten Fraser twice this year. And the Porcupines, if they whoever wins that Nashua Fraser game will play Scobie Opine in the semifinals, and whoever wins the Dodson North Country game will play Luster in the semifinals. If Nashua can handle Fraser, and I actually broadcast Nashua Fraser in Fraser a couple weeks ago, and Nashua handled Fraser pretty easily. That Nashua Scobie semifinal game could be a really good game. Only 3 teams advance out of the District 3C onto divisional. So it's going to be a dogfight after Luster. Luster obviously is the favorite um, by far, but the 2 teams that will follow them into the divisional tournament will be. I couldn't tell you who that might be. I think a Dodson. North Country has played well. Dodson, Scobie, Nashua, Fraser could be any of those teams in the 2-3 spot. So we'll follow that. That's a District 3C boys tournament. That's here in Glasgow, and the boys tournament starts Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. The District 3C girls tournament features the number 1 team in the state for Class C girls. That's North Country, the Lady Mavericks. We've talked a lot about Amber Erickson's um, Seiko Hinsdale Whitewater team, the North Country team, and they just I think, quietly have just cruised through this regular season, pounding teams night in and night out with stifling defense and a real solid, efficient offense. This is North Country again. When I talk about them like I talk about Malta's girls, I think they're only looking at a state championship. Obviously, they're going to take it one game at a time, but North Country 18-0 on the season, unbeaten in the District 3C, obviously, and they have just easily handled every team. So in the District 3C, Scobie ends up as the number 2 team. They will get a first round bye as well. So the first game will be Wednesday at 3 p.m. Nashua girls will take on Dodson. This is the 4-5 game. Nashua has played well at times this year, and I think they might be favored in that game against Dodson. That's a 3 o'clock game. And then the 6 o'clock game will feature Luster Fraser. Luster finished 3, Fraser 6, and um, Luster is going to be favored in that game against Fraser. Luster has some nice players and probably will play Scobie then in the semifinals Thursday night. And North Country will be in the semifinals Thursday as well, taking on the winner of Nashua Dodson. So those are your brackets for the District 3C girls. That is your bracket for the 3C girls. And again, that tournament runs Wednesday through Saturday at Glasgow High School Gymnasium. They're running, as tournaments do, running both boys and girls. So there's 4 games each day: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And those are your brackets, Bob.
Well, and you're going to be where?
I'll be here in Glasgow, actually,
Oh yeah.
for the District 3C tournament. Yep. And then next
Okay.
weekend here in Glasgow, we have the Northern B girls, which will be fun, with Malta being the favorite in that tournament. And it's always fun to follow the Mets. And so that's next weekend. And then those are the 2 tournaments we have in Glasgow, the 2 basketball tournaments we have in Glasgow this year, in any case. And then obviously, hopefully, we'll follow some teams onto the state tournament. Hoping that a Luster, a North Country team can make it to the state Class C tournaments from here. And that District 2C tournament, again, as I mentioned, starting today, that the Lusters and the Luster boys and the North Country girls are casting an eye over there and seeing how that's going to turn out as you get into that Eastern C divisional in a couple of weeks. And that's a boys and girls tournament that starts on a Wednesday, runs through Saturday as well, with 24 games spread over those 4 days. So just basketball, 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 right?
That's right. Always exciting, and it's it seems like we wait for it, and then all of a sudden it's here, and we
Then
wish
it's
we were
gone.
ready for
Yeah,
it.
wish we were ready for it. I mentioned about the wrestling tournament. There's just so much, right, um, to take in. A state basketball tournament or a divisional basketball tournament, especially with the boys and girls running together. It's so hard to comprehend everything without taking a little bit of a break, to clear your mind a little bit. But even those divisional tournaments, when you have boys and girls running together, 24 games over 4 days, just tough to process. And I'll tell you what, doing play
Yeah,
by play with that many games, your mind is just a big jumble by the time Saturday runs around.
yeah,
But I wouldn't
yeah.
want to be doing anything else, I guess.
No, I agree with you. It's a lot of fun doing it, and I don't do many tournaments in the post because as soon as I do, we have problems someplace. So
Yeah, right.
I kind of stay home and monitor everything and watch things. But no, it's going to be a great season. You got some great teams up there to cover uh, with the Wolf Points in the North Country and Puttywood girls. Can't count them out there. I think they're going to be right there as well. You just got some great teams up there, Share Boomer.
Yeah, with when you think about, and maybe I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but from uh, Malta on to the North Dakota border and up into Plentywood, there's a lot of very good basketball teams. When you talk about the Malta boys and girls, you have the Wolf Point boys, you have the North Country girls, the Plentywood girls, the Fairview boys. Those are all teams that I would imagine are in the conversation for bringing a trophy home at that state tournament if they can qualify. So there's some really good basketball. Now, there's a lot of really good teams. We mentioned those, but there's also a lot of teams that will struggle. And those good teams have cleaned up on a lot of those teams this year. You worry sometimes about competition and how that affects you. And I don't know how important that is. I've talked with coaches about that. Do you want to be challenged every weekend? I think a lot of coaches would say they prefer to be challenged as much as possible, right? But
Yeah,
I think about a North Country. They did. They tried to get as good a schedule as they could. It's just that they just dominate the District 3C. So all those games, you're trying to work on things, and they have. Um, and I think that there's not a lot of people worrying about Amber Erickson not having her team ready to take on a Plentywood because they will be ready. And again, signature wins for North Country. They beat Roy Winifred. So at the beginning of the year,
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
signature win for them.
yes. Well, thanks, Stan, for coming on once again this week. Appreciate it as always. I don't want you talking too much more. You got to keep that golden voice and in tune for the weekend.
Yeah, it'll be a fun weekend. Lots of basketball. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Bob.
And I'd like to thank our guests that come on the show and talk about Montana high school sports. Without them, this show would not be possible. And once again, if you like this podcast, please click on the subscribe button below to get alerts when we have up a new podcast.